Good morning, everyone. This is Terry Hovey. I am Terry Hovey, pastor of First Baptist Church in Higgins, Texas. And today I want to bring to you the first of four-part series called Choices. And this sermon is Choices, choosing purpose over popularity. You know, and I want you to think about something. Have you ever thought about where you're at right now and in life and how you got here? When you think about it, essentially, we are the sum total of the choices that we make, aren't we? Now, who I am today is a result of the choices that I made in the past. And who I'm going to be will be a result of the decisions that I make in the days and the weeks and the months and years to come. And the choices that we make in life really do matter, don't they? For the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about some specific choices that we need to make. For example, next week I want to talk about choosing to surrender control. So if you happen to be a control freak and you like to be in charge of everything, the ones that's in charge, and trying to take control of your situation and everything that's around you, then you might want to make a special effort to be here next week, because we are going to talk about choosing to surrender that control. But in order for me to introduce today's choice, I want to ask you to imagine something, if you would. So let your imagination get to work and go into overtime with it, start to let it run wild. Everyone, I want you to imagine, if you would, that everyone likes you. Excuse me. Everyone approves of you. No matter what you do, absolutely everyone thinks you are just totally awesome. Now, obviously, excuse me, I got my throat trying to get it cleared. Excuse me. Obviously, the reason why I asked you to imagine this and let your imagination run wild is because of the simple fact that no matter how totally awesome you really are, not everyone is going to like you. 100% approval, 100% of the time is an impossibility, isn't it? Absolutely. But, now I want you to imagine something else that I really do believe is possible. Matter of fact, not only do I believe that this is possible, but I believe that this is something that Christ actually wants to become a reality in your life, in the life of everyone who calls upon His name. So imagine now being so consumed with the desire to please Christ that you don't care about the approval of the people around you. Imagine yourself waking up every morning absolutely consumed with passion and purpose, knowing deep down inside that you are doing what you were created to do. This is what drives you. And the approval of the people around you doesn't distract you at all. It doesn't matter to you. Can you imagine this? Or is it too much of a stretch? I truly believe that this is not only a possibility for every believer, but I also believe that this is the desire of Christ for every believer. It's a choice that I want to encourage each and every one of you to make, to choose purpose over popularity. And though I believe this is the desire of Christ for you, the problem is that too many of us choose just the opposite. We choose popularity over purpose. And that might be because many of us really don't know what our purpose is. We experiment with this, we experiment with that, and nothing really works out right for us because we don't know what our purpose in life is. I can remember I can remember years ago, and I'm dating myself here. Years ago, I was watching an episode of Beverly Hillbillies, and you know that banker, Mr. Drysdale, his secretary's name was Miss Hathaway. Well, Miss Hathaway took Ellie Mae to this fancy clothing store, you know, and she was going to help Ellie Mae choose and buy a nice wardrobe, nice clothes and everything for this big coming out party that Drysdale and Miss Hathaway were trying to set up for Ellie Mae, the big coming out party, right? And so Ellie Mae was behind the screen or behind the door in the dressing room, and Miss Hathaway was outside handing clothes back and forth and talking, and Miss Hathaway was trying to answer Ellie Mae's questions and stuff like that. When all of a sudden Ellie Mae asked her what to do with this double-barrel shotgun double-barreled slingshot that she had been given. And Miss Hathaway had no idea what she was talking about. So eventually, Ellie Mae opens the door and hands Miss Hathaway a bra. Now, I guess, you know, she could have turned that thing into a slingshot and threw some rocks with it, I guess. But obviously, what happened here was that she was unaware of what its purpose was, what it was intended to do. And many of us, we don't know what our purpose is either. We have no clue. And we don't know what our purpose is. And so if we don't know, why then would we go and seek answers from someone else who is just like us, probably sitting in the same boat that we're sitting in, has no clue of what his purpose is either? Why would we go to someone else and ask what our purpose is? You know, we tend to go to others that are just like us instead of going to the source. We seek the approval of other people in everything that we do, especially today. We are a very narcissistic society. Do you like my clothes? You know, what do you think of my hairstyle? Do you like me? Answer yes or no. You know, you remember that as a kid, sending the note, do you like me? Answer yes or no. There's a song about that, right? Am I important to you? Do I fit in? Are we besties? Are you following me on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram? What do you think of all these millions of selfies that I take on and I post online every day? You know, aren't I wonderful? Don't I look great from this angle? Like this, right? You know, in this day and age of social media, it doesn't take long at all to become consumed with what other people think about us. And before you know it, we are literally living for the approval of other people. Do I fit in? Am I good enough? Do I measure up? We're trying to find our meaning in life in what other people think of us, and we are totally forgetting that we were created for a divine purpose. And folks, if we want to know what the purpose of a thing is, we shouldn't be asking the thing what its purpose is, but we should ask the one who created the thing. And that's our problem. So I want you to write this down. Or if you've got one of the bulletins on the back, fill in the blanks. Write this down. Living for the approval of people keeps us from the purpose of God. Let me say that again. Living for the approval of people keeps us from the purpose of God. You know, when we're consumed with what other people think of us, then we tend to forget about what God thinks about us. He takes second, he comes in second in our thoughts. And as long as we're consumed with the approval of people, then we won't be living for the purposes of God. So I want to challenge you today to make a choice. Because we are the sum total of the choices that we make, then I challenge you to choose purpose over popularity. Let me illustrate what I'm talking about with someone that we're real familiar with from the Bible. You see, Moses was a person who was born a Hebrew slave, but he was adopted and raised in the household of Pharaoh of Egypt. He was born into poverty and slavery, and he was raised in wealthy extravagance and royalty. He could have easily chosen to live a life of comfort and ease. And you know what? I would almost be willing to bet that he was sorely tempted to do just that. But instead, he chose calling over comfort. He chose purpose over popularity. Hebrews 11, 24 through 26, we read, "By faith, Moses, when he became of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he looked to the reward." His purpose in life meant more to him than all of the wealth and all of the popularity and all the extravagance that Egypt could provide for him. He put more stock in the reward that was to come than in those passing pleasures of sin. Now, before I go any further, I want to caution you against limiting your search for purpose to the big things. I want to caution you against that. We can call them the big P or the capital P purpose things, right? Obviously, Moses' purpose in leading the Israelites out of slavery and then through the wilderness wanderings was his capital P purpose in life. It was his big thing. And many times we may become so focused in finding our own capital P purpose in life that we miss the other things that are right in front of us. Not everyone is called to be the leader of a nation, are they? Not everyone is called to be a missionary in a foreign land. Not everyone is called to find a cure for cancer. We don't get so caught up. Don't get so caught up in looking at the forest that you can't see the trees that are right there in front of you. Maybe your capital P purpose in life is to love God and to glorify Him. And then your life the rest of your life is filled with those little p purposes, those lowercase p's. Maybe your purpose is to be an encouragement to someone who desperately needs encouragement. Or maybe when you see someone who has a need of some kind, then your purpose, God's purpose for you at that moment in time, that purpose for your life at that particular moment, is to provide or to fulfill that need. Because you have the opportunity, you have the means, and God has put it upon your heart to fulfill that need. And do you know what happens, folks, when you remain faithful in fulfilling all your purpose in daily life and all these little P's like this throughout your life? When you're seeing and you are meeting all of those little P's, well, when you're faithful in a little, what the Bible tells us, what Christ tells us, when you're faithful in a little, you'll be given more. One day you will hear when you're faithful in this, Christ say, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things." Matthew 25:23. And you'll also hear him say, like in verse 29, "For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have an abundance." So remember, don't lose sight of the goal. Don't lose sight of the goal. There is power in purpose. And there's power in recognizing that for this moment in time, for this person, I am called by God to make a difference in their life. This is my purpose right now. And to help this sink in, I want to give you three thoughts about power in purpose. With the first thought being, purpose diminishes distractions. Number one, purpose diminishes distractions. One of the biggest distractions that we have is comparing ourselves to other people. And closely then related to that is our desire for their approval. The simple fact that social media is such a huge part of our lives these days is absolutely proof of this. We throw our faces and our lives out there into the open, out into the public, in the hopes that all of our friends and our followers will validate us somehow. When someone doesn't like what we've put out there, or share it themselves, then we start to wonder, what's going on? You know, what have I done wrong? What's he thinking? Or why doesn't she make a comment about this that affirms me and validates me somehow? Or, you know, we'll look at other people's lives and then we'll start to compare ourselves with them. Sally has already finished college. But you know what? I'm on the 11-year plan. Or Bob has already got grandkids that he is bouncing on his knee and spoiling, and he's only 45. But look at me, man, I'm 64 years old and I got none. I'm so far behind everyone else that I will never catch up. And this is the great curse of comparing ourselves with other people. But focusing on purpose diminishes that. For example, another biblical character that you'll remember, Nehemiah. Nehemiah was so heartbroken that the wall around Jerusalem had been lying in ruins for so many years that he decided that he was going to do something about it himself. And so he rallied the people and he got everyone working. He himself also went up on that ladder and he climbed up on that wall and he started setting bricks and rocks and boulders in place, focusing on getting this wall around his beloved Jerusalem built. He was concentrating on getting that wall fixed when all of a sudden the enemies of God start causing him a lot of grief. Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem, they begin doing everything that they can in order to distract him or in order to stop him from building this wall. I guess they were Democrats, right? No, but seriously, they do all kinds of things in order to distract Nehemiah from his purpose. But you know what he said? He said he was so focused on his purpose in what he said in Nehemiah 6:3 was, I am doing a great work so that I cannot come down. Why should the work cease while I leave it to go down to you? You know, he wasn't having anything to do with any of this nonsense. Their distractions diminished because he remained focused on his purpose. And we need to look at our purpose in the same way. Whether it's a big P or a little p, we need to focus on it in the same manner. That we're doing a great work. That this is what God has called me to do at this time, and I will not be distracted from it. Whatever it is you're doing, supplying a need for someone else, or encouraging a brother or a sister in order to get them to remain faithful. Or it could even be getting yourself out of debt. Whatever it is, there is power in purpose. And because you're not living for the approval of other people, you're living for the purposes of God and for His approval. Purpose diminishes distractions. And it also, number two, purpose pushes you through the pain. Purpose pushes you through the pain. You know, when you have a purpose, it tends to motivate you to keep going when things get tough. or when you start to struggle, when it starts to hurt. You know, there's an old weightlifting saying, you know, there's no pain, no gain. You know, I kind of saw that this last week myself, you know, when I was working out at the gym and I started getting this twinge in my shoulder. So I reduced the weight and I kept doing the exercises and everything, but just with less weight. And I pushed through the pain. But, you know, I should have let the pain tell me something else to stop, because later on, a couple of days later, I had to go and get a shot in my shoulder. But you know what? Think about this. The pathway to purpose many times is paved with pain. Think about Moses, David, Esther, Nehemiah, Mary, Jesus. Everywhere you turn in the Bible, you see people that are on mission, people that are focusing on their purpose, and they are suffering because of it. And that's because whenever you're doing what God has called you to do, folks, the enemy of your soul is going to resist you. He is going to come against you at every turn. And you know what? When you are being resisted by Satan, you can rest assured, folks, you can rest assured that you are in good company. Paul wrote to Timothy, all who desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution. So let's look at the apostles for a minute. These were men of God who were called for a specific purpose in life. And their road was filled, their road was filled with pain, wasn't it? You know, the Bible only records the death of 2 of the apostles. We know that Judas hung himself and that Herod Agrippa murdered James. Then the details of the death of 3 other disciples, John, Bartholomew, and Simon the Canaanite, are completely unknown to us. We have no tradition or anything, letters or anything that give us any indication of what happened to them. But the deaths of the other 7 are known to us, either through tradition or through early writings. Simon Peter died under the Nero persecutions of AD 67-68. And they were going to crucify him. And according to one of the letters from one of the ancient fathers that we have, he was going to be crucified, and he felt himself to be unworthy of being crucified in the same manner as his Lord, so he asked to be crucified hanging upside down, which he did. And then we have 6 of the other apostles, all of them, who died horrible deaths as martyrs. And then we look at the Apostle Paul. His persecutions are outlined for us in vivid detail in his letters and also in the book of Acts. And we know that he was beheaded in prison in Rome about the same time that Peter was killed in those Nero persecutions of AD 67-68. But through all of the persecution and the pain that he suffered in the service of Christ, he was motivated to push through because he kept his eye on the prize. He kept his eye on the prize. He pushed through so well, so much, that he wrote to Timothy in 2 Timothy 4:6-8. I am already being poured out as a drink offering, and the time of my departure is at hand. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Finally, there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give to me on that day. And not to me only, but also to all who have loved his appearing. Folks, purpose diminishes distractions. And the second thing that it does is it pushes you through the pain. But the third thing is that purpose also empowers you to please God. Purpose empowers you to please God. You know, Moses served God in the face of all sorts of opposition. He faced opposition from his enemies, like Pharaoh, and he also faced opposition from his own people in their constant complaining, all the time complaining. He faced this, His purpose empowered him to keep going because he knew that he was doing what God had called him to do. He was doing what he was created to do. Peter and John faced opposition from the religious leaders in Jerusalem for preaching Christ in the temple. And they arrested them, and then they brought them before the Sanhedrin and told them in Acts 4:18, commanded them not to speak at all, nor teach in the name of Jesus. And you know what their response was to that command? In the very next verse, in verse 19, but Peter and John answered and said to them, whether it is right in the sight of God to listen to you more than to God, you judge. When Paul was standing in front of the Roman governor named Festus, telling him about Christ and giving his own personal testimony of how he came to faith in Christ, that Roman cried out with a loud voice, Paul, your great learning has made you mad. And then when King Agrippa, a little bit later, was listening to him, he said in Acts 26:28, you almost persuade me to become a Christian. To which Paul replied, I would to God that not only you, but also all who hear me today might become both almost and altogether such as I am, except for these chains. Purpose empowers us to please God. We're empowered because we're no longer distracted by other people. We're empowered because we are able to push through the pain and the discomfort that's associated with following Christ. And all of that pain seems to be lessened now, or maybe even worth it. Because we know that the reward to come is far greater than anything that we are experiencing right here. We're empowered because we know that it is an impossibility to please everybody. But we can please God. And when we please God by living by faith. And we remain obedient to all of those lowercase p's that we were talking about. Day in and day out, we remain obedient to fulfilling those lowercase p's. We please God when we die to ourselves daily and let Christ live through us. We please God when day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, we choose God's purpose over popularity. We please God when we lay down our lives in order to serve Him, being faithful in all of those little purpose moments that we're faced with day in and day out. Because we know that when we do that, we know that when we remain faithful in that, the big moments will come. That we remain faithful in the little, we will be given more. Please God when we choose calling over comfort. We please God when we choose purpose